What do you think it is that differentiates a successful entrepreneur to one that isn't, in terms of what you kind of do?
So the first thing that comes to mind is reverse engineering the future rather than forward engineering the past. So what we tend to call this is having a playbook. So if you've worked, like you worked in hedge funds for years, right? And great hedge funds, they have a hedge fund playbook. They have their proprietary playbook.
Doug and Daniel are doing a retreat together in a five-star hotel over in XYZ. What do you think really would be the catch that would get people there?
So I always start with a few frameworks. So there are certain frameworks about the hooks, authority, benefits, call to action. So there's certain frameworks that work. And so you want to pick a good framework and you say, okay, in this format, this framework.
Today on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories, I'm joined by Daniel Priestley. Daniel is an award-winning entrepreneur who has built and sold several successful businesses. He's also written 5 best-selling books on starting and scaling a business, and he's the founder of Dent Global and co-founder of Scoreapp. I first met Daniel on Clubhouse during the pandemic, where we shared the stage on many occasions helping struggling business owners during one of the toughest periods in history. And I have to say, he really is a true inspiration and a pleasure to have on the show. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Wasn't that those Clubhouse days? My goodness, that was a wild time, a very strange time.
I know, well, I don't know about you, but we were obviously stuck indoors and
It
I
was
had
all
nothing.
lockdown, and yeah, exactly. It was such a strange time. I spent countless hours just around the house and wandering around the streets on Clubhouse because that was our connection to the outside world.
Yeah, and I remember, I think you and I, one particular time, I think we were on for hours on how to build $1 million business, which was run by a couple of other guys, which was it was fantastic. So, no, I really enjoyed my time with it. And I have to say, what was so inspiring is that there was a lot of people trying to sell on there, and you were really trying to add value and genuinely trying to help people as well. So I salute you, and in terms of that, and thanks for all the time that we spent together as well.
Yeah,
But
likewise.
I'm conscious that my audience is a little bit different than yours in terms of being more on the corporate background, you on the entrepreneurial background. So I'd love you to just share a little bit about your story, because I know you came across from Australia, arrived in London, and kind of set your post out and have really grown massively from there. So just share a little bit about your story in terms of the entrepreneurial story that where you are today.
Yeah, so I arrived in London about 19 years ago. So it's been a while since I've been in London, coming up on 20 years. My first 10 years of my career was running a conferencing business where I ran a lot of events for big CEOs, and we did a lot of tours. We did book launches and speaking tours. We did the launch of a number of franchises. We did software development launches. And basically, the two things that I had to do a lot of was fill events, which is incredibly hard to do event marketing because you've got to get people excited and willing to turn up on the spot. And the other thing was personal branding, basically making a CEO interesting enough that people would want to see them speak. So I spent a lot of time on those two problems. How do we build a personal brand around a particular individual who's just a normal person? And how do we fill big events and have big turn up all on one day, even sell tickets? And then the last, we were talking about the pandemic, but before that, we had the global financial crisis in 2009. In 2009, my conferencing business was hit really, really hard. And I went through the process of trying to discover what my intellectual property was and what my core skills were. And I discovered that essentially I had these two core skills of building personal brands and getting people to show up to stuff. I wrote a book called Key Person of Influence, which went on to be a best-selling book. And it was one of the very first books for business owners and entrepreneurs and business leaders to build their personal brand online. And we ended up, building the Key Person of Influence Accelerator program, which was a personal brand building program. And then I wrote the book called Oversubscribed, which was how do you get people showing up for things and how do you get people to line up for stuff. And that also became the basis of some successful companies. So I guess you'd say I'm a specialist in those couple of things: successful campaigns, personal branding. These are two of the things I've been talking about for the last 15 years.
and very successful at them as well. And I have to say, having gone from corporate world to entrepreneur world and coaching world, it is difficult in this saturated digital space to be able to get, attention as such. What would you say is the secret sauce in terms of standing out as a key person of influence in, maybe even just 2025?
Look, it's going to get harder as well. We're about to in 2025 will be one of the last moments that you've got to build a personal brand because AI generated content is going to flood the internet, and it's going to be very, very hard to get above the noise. Almost like a great fog is rolling in, and if you're an airplane that's already up in the air, you're going to be able to keep flying around. If you haven't got off the ground yet, it's going to be harder and harder to take off in that fog. So it is going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a great moat in a post-AI world. Having a personal brand gives you distribution and exclusivity, and it's going to be a very powerful thing to leverage. So the way that we want to stand out is there's a few things. There's I guess two sides to it, which is the ability to rapidly communicate what makes you valuable and different, and then the ability to stay connected with people so that they feel they have a relationship with you at scale. Um, so we can break that down in a couple of ways. Let's talk about the idea of standing out. So if I can zoom out for a minute, there's something called a power law and there's something called a bell curve. And a bell curve is the rewarding of the average, right? All the results go to the average. And a power law is all the results go to the extraordinary. And in the Industrial Revolution, in the industrial age, we created systems called factories and offices, which basically clustered everyone towards being average and rewarded everyone who was average. Homer Simpson was the great hero in the 90s of the ultimate of average. But the digital environment rewards the extraordinary, rewards the very interesting, the very different. And it creates these power laws. So, for example, on dating apps, someone who's very good looking will get 100 dates a week, and someone who's average will get 0 dates in a year, right? So it's these power laws, these unfortunate power laws that digital environments create. Now, when we want to succeed in the digital environment, we have to create the rules of the game and create our own game where we can be at the top end of our own power law, right? So, for example, if I said I'm a average digital transformation consultant, I help anyone with digital transformation, that puts me in average, which means no rewards are going to go there. If I say I wrote a book called 24 Assets, which is about digital transformation using my methodology of creating 24 assets, I've now created a very narrow category. And I'm, of course, because I wrote the book on it, I'm, of course, the number one in the world, right? So therefore, I've figured out how to hack my results towards being at the top end of a power law. So what we have to do is we have to define ourselves in a way that is unique, define ourselves in a way that's almost category of one definition, and make sure that we're not easily compared to everybody else in the industry so that we just show up as a normal average person because the internet just does not reward normal and average. So that's one of the ideas. How do you define what you do? I'll give you a real life example. One of my clients was a financial planner, and she stood up in front of the group and said, "I'm a financial planner. I can help anyone do financial planning, average." And then we worked with her, and she said, I only work with rural families that own farms that are concerned about securing the family farm for the next 2 generations. And I work on financial planning for securing family agricultural businesses 2 generations forward. And I especially help with the problem of children and grandchildren who are urban city folk who find themselves in charge of a rural agricultural farm business. And by defining herself in that category, she basically doesn't have any competition. So she's at the top of the power law. So that essentially that's the standing out piece.
Yeah. So it's very much about niching down as such. And for, let's say, someone who's starting a business from scratch today, what would you say as an entrepreneur who's been there and done it? What would you say would be the kind of the game plan, the 90-day game plan that you'd recommend for them?
If you're launching a new business,
Yeah.
So we want to conduct fast, cheap experiments. One of the things I love to do is start with lead generation. I believe all businesses start with lead generation. So I had this amazing mentor who had built very successful companies, and I worked underneath him for a couple of years. And he said, everything's downstream from lead generation. When it comes to business, if you can't generate leads, you don't have a business. And basically, he drilled this into me in so many different ways. But another way that he said this, which I loved, which is people think they have a business when they have something to sell. You have a business when you have someone who wants to buy, right? It actually doesn't, it even doesn't matter if you even don't have something to sell, if you have someone who wants to buy. So for example, if you, as a mental exercise, as a kind of thought experiment, if you had someone who said, hey, I'm willing to pay 50 million for X, Y, and Z, and you can sign a contract with them that you've got that contract in place, you essentially you're in a great position, because if you can find that thing for anything less than 50 million, you're about to make millions of profit. So the best businesses is where you have buyers first, not when you have something to sell. Now, 90% of people who start with something, starting a new business, they start with having something to sell. So, just grabbing something off my desk, this little face oil, right? So I've got some face oil here. It's called Glow to Sleep face oil, right?
I was going to say you're looking glowing today.
Thank you, thank you. It's all down to the oil. So if I was to say most entrepreneurs, what would they do if they're going to launch this business? They'd probably waste 90 days getting the oil perfected and figuring out their suppliers and ordering vast quantities of whatever's in here and all that kind of stuff. They're obsessing over the supply side. If I was going to launch this, all I would do is create some graphically designed images of the bottle and run a waiting list campaign for a new product that's coming soon that has all these benefits, and invite people to just join the waiting list. And my job is to get maybe 100, 200, 300 people on the waiting list, maybe 1,000 people on the waiting list. And only if I can generate leads do I even worry about what the hell goes into the bottle. And I solve the supply side only if I've got the demand side sorted. So I often run fast, cheap experiments to see if I can sell stuff. If that works, then we focus on what we can build. I never ever spend a day of my time or even an hour of my time on the supply side of something if I don't have the demand side sorted out first. So what am I going to do in the first 90 days? Lead generation. I'm going to figure out what goes on the landing page. What ads do we run? How do we message people? Are influencers willing to get behind the campaign? Can I sign someone who's got a big brand to be the face of it? Can we do email marketing? What price points are people willing to pay? I'm gonna when people join the waiting list, I'm gonna ask them a series of questions like, what best describes your current situation? What best describes the outcome you're looking for? What have you tried that hasn't worked? How much are you willing to pay for this XYZ result? What else do you think we need to know that we don't currently know, that would help us to build a better product for you? And all of that is completely in front of talking to any suppliers or setting up anything that is supply side. So I'm a big one to distinguish between demand versus supply side, and I'm going to go all in on the demand side.
Yeah, I love that. And you obviously as well, you've got the Scoreapp, and that obviously helps a lot with lead generation. Do you just want to give a quick description about what the Scoreapp does and how it can help with lead generation?
Yeah, scoreapp.com, which is spelled scoreapp.com. So SCOREAPP.com. It's a piece of software that we developed off the back of a very successful marketing campaign that I ran. So in 2015, I launched an online scorecard, an online assessment called the Key Person of Influence Personal Brand Assessment. And 100,000 people filled it in, and we did $20 million worth of sales off the back of it. And it was just one of these really cool campaigns, because part of filling in an assessment is people answered 40 questions about how they were building their personal brand. And that was just the gold dust information that we needed to be able to sell stuff, to be able to have a very sensible conversation with potential clients. Off the back of that, I launched a second one, which was called the 24 Assets Assessment, which was the digital transformation assessment. And tens of thousands of people filled that in. And I ended up getting all these people saying, Daniel, I like how you're doing your marketing. I want to create one of those assessments for my book, or I want to create one of those assessments for my product, or I'm a fitness trainer. I want to create a fitness training assessment, or I'm a cybersecurity consulting firm. I want to do a cybersecurity assessment. So I ended up buying this little agency, an IT agency, and basically saying, all right, you guys are going to be specialists in building these assessments for my clients. And we sent all the clients over and they would build the assessments. And on average, it was about $10,000 to $15,000 to build one of these assessments. And we built so many of them, we eventually got talking about why don't we create a platform where people can DIY, they can build their own. And we built a SaaS business called Scoreapp. And we took something that we used to do for $15,000 and made it $30 a month, right? So we built a SaaS product. And since then, over 8,000 companies have now taken on this method of marketing, and it's transformational. People get 10 times the conversions that their website gets. So they send traffic to their website and get 4% conversion, and they send traffic to their scorecard and get 40% conversion. They go from being able to maybe collect name and email to name, email, and 20 things about each customer. Their sales conversions go up. They can cherry pick the needle in a haystack client. They can price more effectively per client based on what the data is telling them. So it becomes this transformational campaign that people run. So it's basically setting up an online assessment, for what you do.
No, it's fantastic. And actually, I actually, having read about it because I was doing my research for you, I decided to try just my own version myself, even just with a simple poll on LinkedIn, where I just asked very simply, I said, in terms of leadership, because I do leadership training, what do you think is the most important thing? Communication, presentation skills, emotional intelligence and resilience, and something else. And straight away, people are answering. You get 70 or 80 leads, and it makes a much better way of contacting people because they're actually interested in it, which is exactly what you're basically doing, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And
Just quickly on this one for you, Doug. When you go to an organization, one of the biggest barriers that you would face is that often people who need leadership training don't think they need leadership training, right? No names. I'm not going to point out any names, but I bet you can think of someone
yeah,
who they're sitting there going, "Oh, we don't have a problem with that," and you're sitting there slapping your head, going, "You definitely need leadership training." And all the employees, if they heard that person say, "I don't need leadership training," they're all slapping their head, going, "You definitely need leadership training." So one of the things an assessment does is that it allows empirical data to decide whether they need leadership training. So one of the things that's really powerful is you go into these organizations and say, look, you may not need leadership training. And what we do is, in most cases, we actually find out that there might be just some brushstrokes that could improve things. There could be some slight tweaks, or there might be some really important things to do. But what we do is we just get the entire team to fill in the assessment. The assessment will tell us whether you need leadership training or not, and how much of it you might need and what you might need to focus on. And really, the best practice here is not to judge too soon, just to let the assessment play out and see what turns up. And rather than selling what you do, which is the leadership training and intervention work, you just sell the assessment. And you say, by the way, good news, it's free. Do the assessment for free. So you remove all barriers. And it's kind of like if you went to the doctor, they said, we're just going to do a little blood test. And, oh, we've just detected that you've got this issue with pancreas levels, right? And you're like, oh, God, I didn't even know I had a problem. But now the test has revealed that there's a problem that needs solving. So rather than selling what you do, you just sell the assessment for what you do. It's really, really powerful.
that is brilliant. Because I always say, in terms of the word relationship, there's a relay in terms of conscious communication and active listening. There's your shuns, which is your expectations and intentions, and then you need to put the other person on the same ship in terms of the right direction. And most people make assumptions rather than asking questions. And obviously, questions are the best thing because when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So, no, I love that. Absolutely love that. And I know you have, I was listening to your ScaleX Summit speech that you did up with Brendan McKernan, which was brilliant, by the way. Absolutely loved it. I know you spoke us alongside my great friend Jack Daly, who's been on this podcast as well, who absolutely loved you as well.
Oh,
And
amazing.
he was the reason why he said, we should get back in touch because he just absolutely loved your presentation, and as I did as well. If anyone hasn't seen it, I think Brendan has it on his ScaleX Summit website on YouTube. Anyway, but you've helped countless businesses scale, and I'm sure there is a big difference to those that can scale smoothly and those that just plateau. What do you think that difference is, and what do you think people really need to be doing in terms of their business? And even look, you do so many events at the moment, so linking it into that, what is it that you think that makes you successful in dragging so many people in? Well, it's not even dragging; people want to be there, obviously. But it's. I've been, and by the way, if anybody hasn't been, even to your freebie to begin with, go because you'll get so much out of it because you give so much value. What do you think it is that differentiates a successful entrepreneur to one that isn't, in terms of what you kind of do?
So the first thing that comes to mind is reverse engineering the future rather than forward engineering the past. So what we tend to call this is having a playbook. So if you've worked, like you worked in hedge funds for years, right? And great hedge funds, they have a hedge fund playbook. They have their proprietary playbook. And the more you get embedded in their leadership team, they can almost like kind of in a few words say, "Oh, we're going to XYZ that," and everyone at the table goes, "Oh yeah, I know. Like what you just said in those little words is this playbook that is 40 pages of how we do that, and we're going to execute that playbook on that particular opportunity." And it's like, right? So you take really great teams, they're synchronized up with the playbooks, and the playbook is essentially a way of reverse engineering the future rather than forward engineering the past. If you take companies that typically fail, they're just forward engineering the past. They're basically saying, "Oh, we're just going to try a bit more of what we do and all that sort of stuff." So I'll give you an example. It might look like this. It might be like for me, if I'm launching a company, I'm going to scale up with 2, 4, 8, 30 on the team. So I'm going to have two-person scout team who are going to scout the opportunity and collect data quickly and cheaply. Four-person fire starting team is going to launch the business and get our first 7 figures of revenue. And they're going to execute a launch campaign, and then they're going to move into a perfect repeatable week campaign playbook. And then we're going to go to an 8-person core team who are going to maintain 1 million of profit. And their job is to work with, as a core team of 8 with a surrounding team of suppliers to get themselves into that mode. Perfect repeatable week, quarterly spotlight, annual big message. They're executing that playbook. And then we're going to jump very rapidly to 30 people on a team with a 5-person leadership team and a set of teams of teams. And we're going to basically go to a performance mode where we are now a scalable, exitable, valuable company that has a life of its own. And we're going to try and do that all within about 2 to 3 years. So it's like, okay, 2, 4, 8, 30, boom, 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 boom. And we know the future and we know where it falls off the rails. And ultimately, the whole team completely understands we're executing this, then this, then this, then this. Right. So it's like we're working backwards from being, and we might also be ultimately working backwards from we want 18 million of revenue with 4 million of net profit, and then we want to have a business that's worth 12x. So it's going to be worth 48 million on exit. And it's like we're working backwards from all of that. In a lifestyle capacity, I might say, oh, as a lifestyle business, I want to do 1.2 million of revenue with a little team of 8 people, but mostly remote. And I want to make 400,000 of profit, but I only want to work 3 days a week. And I want to be able to live and work from anywhere and travel from anywhere. So I'm going to work backwards from a design that I think has a high chance of being possible, plausible. So I'm working backwards from the future rather than forwards from a little bit more of what I have versus I'm working towards a particular design. So that's definitely something that differentiates the two. And then the other thing that comes to mind is what's called demand and supply tension. which is that most entrepreneurs that do not succeed are not masters in maintaining demand and supply tension, and entrepreneurs that do succeed are actually masters in demand and supply tension. So most music festivals fail because they focus on having an amazing lineup of bands. And as soon as they've got their lineup of bands, they tell people, well, we're going to have a festival, buy a ticket as soon as you can. And here's the tickets, they're available on sale today. And that doesn't work because there's no demand and supply tension. Glastonbury says there's a lineup of bands. You're not allowed to buy a ticket. You have to register for a ticket. You have to pre-register. Only when we hit 700,000 pre-registrations will we release 130,000 tickets, and most of you Muppets are going to miss out.
It's so true. Like I having, I've been in the Times, been in the Independent, I've written a book, Stephen Covey testimony, the book, got awards, everything like that. And I did initially exactly what the other guys did and got nowhere. Then I listened to you, and then I started doing more about exactly what you just said secondly there. And it's incredible how the psyche just changes. It's
Yes.
it's remarkable.
That's it. That's it. It's first make your market, then make your sales. So if you've got 10 clients you want to sell, you're going to get 60 people saying they want to be clients before you release the client availability. So it's just the ability to manufacture demand and supply tension. Personally, I hate it. Even though I'm phenomenally good at it, I wish that I could just skip the dance. I wish I could just say, hey, here's what I've got. It's amazing value. uh, come and grab it when you're ready, and they would. They don't. They just don't. It's annoying. They just don't. Um,
And it is annoying because I know you, and I know genuinely you're very authentic as a person. So it becomes hard because I'm the same. So it becomes hard to play the game when you just want to say, I've done it before. Here are the results. Look at the
yeah.
results. I can do that again for you as well. But they still want to play this silly game to be able to.
Yeah, you got to do the silly game. I like telling people that there's a silly game. So I like to say, look, the way it works is I get 40 people to fill in an application form, and then I select the 6 clients that I want to work with. And I don't select 6 clients until 40 people have filled in a form, because I've found that way I get the best clients. And I know it's a silly game, but that's how I do things. And it's always led to being able to get great clients who is a really good chemistry. And I can completely understand why you wouldn't want to bother filling in the form, because there's a high chance you'll miss out.
Yeah, I love that. And I heard on, I think it was Lewis House's podcast that you are looking to maybe at some stage sell Scoreapp. And, when is the right time to think about selling a business, and what should you have in place for that moment to come?
The right time to sell a business is precisely when you least want to sell it. When the business is so amazingly good that you think to yourself, I would be crazy to sell this business. It's growing, it's profitable, it's everything's lined up, the team are incredible, the culture's great. Um, Only an idiot would sell this business because it's such a great business. That's the best time to sell. And the worst possible time to sell a business is when you'd like to sell the business, when you want to sell it. And you go, oh, gee, I wish someone would take this off my hands. Very bad time to sell the business. It's funny because I literally had lunch with someone today. A few years ago, their business was doing 4 million of revenue with about 800,000 of profit. And there was several companies that wanted to buy the business, and they said, no way, we're loving this. Today, that same business is doing 1.3 million of revenue with 100,000 of profit. He desperately wants to sell the business. And I said, you're going to have a hard time selling that business.
Mm.
So the feeling, having sold a few businesses, the feeling of I don't want to sell this business is a really good indicator. It's such a great, like that should be your indicator of now's the time, sell the business. Whatever is your reason for not wanting to sell it, that's their reason for buying it. All the reasons why you do want to sell it is the reasons why they don't want to buy it. So, that's how it works. The 3 things that you need to have in place is number one, You need to have proprietary assets. The business has to be based on some sort of proprietary asset, something that's special that you do that others don't do very well, something that's hard to replicate. So, maybe you've won awards, maybe you've got a particular exclusive contract, maybe you've invested heavily into content and it would be very, very hard to replicate that content. Any of that I'd call the proprietary asset. The second thing is the recurring revenue off the back of the proprietary asset. The most annoying thing about CFOs and people who are trained in finance is they just don't believe that a salesperson will ever make another sale after the founder leaves, unless it's a contracted sale that goes on service level agreement, recurring revenue, monthly subscription, membership. It's like for a CFO who's analyzing your business and valuing your business, it's like if you've got a contract in place for a service level agreement, a subscription, or a membership, they imagine that as being the most unbelievably bulletproof revenue stream that they can calculate. They'll take that to the bank every day of the week. If you've spent the last 20 years making sales and you have an amazing sales team and you've always been able to replace the sales team and you've always been able to train salespeople and you've got a great sales script and you've got a great sales process, they will sit there and go, yeah, but that won't work for us. It's just crazy. But unfortunately, that is just how they're wired. So you pay a very fierce penalty for sales businesses and you get an incredible reward for contract businesses. The perfect scenario is that you've moved your revenue across to recurring revenue contracts that automatically renew. So monthly recurring revenue is the name of the game. And then the third big one is a core team that are not founder reliant. So you want them loyal to the business, not loyal to the founder. The first phase that can kick in is about 8 to 12 people. The real phase where that really happens is about 30 people. So when you hit 30 people, when the founder leaves, there's a very good chance that 4 or 5 people will just leave around that same time. But there's 25 others who are going to stay, and there's a lot of accumulated intellectual capital in the team. But when the founder leaves an 8-person team, there's also a very good chance that 4 people are going to leave, and there's only 4 people left, and there's not a lot of intellectual capital left in the team. And that scares a lot of acquirers. So if you could say the perfect wish list would be 30 people on a team, monthly recurring revenue, high gross margins, good net margins, and proprietary asset that's hard to copy. Those are your big 3. And then the final thing that really gets it sold is a bidding war. 2 companies want it, only one can have it.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully 100 million coming your way then.
Do you know, I've got this friend of mine that I go skiing with, and he said to me, it took 15 years to make 120 million, and it took 24 hours to make the next 120 million.
Wow.
And I said, how did that happen? He said, it took 15 years to build a business that was worth 120 million, and we were about to sell it. And at the last minute, when we'd reached terms, we had 2 buyers, and one of the buyers had appeared to have dropped out of the race, and we were about to do the sale with the other one. And the other buyer came back and said, we'll pay 5 million extra to get the deal. And the other one went, we'll pay 5 million more than that. And the other one went, we'll pay 5 million more than that. He said it was the craziest thing. In a 24-hour window, the price moved from 120 million to 240 million. And he said it was the most unbelievable thing he'd ever experienced. It was a tech company, but they went from 120 million agreed heads of terms, term sheet, to 240 million in 24 hours later. And he said it was 15 years to 120 million, 24 hours to 240 because of the bidding war.
I bet he had a big smile on his face on the ski slopes that day. And obviously, just linking into that, but slightly different. You are a very good communicator and presenter. and I've seen it both on your ads just seem to come up all the time on my Instagram. How in terms of communicating, what do you think? Let's take an example. For example, let's say I have a retreat I'm doing in November. I want to sell the retreat. What do you think is the best way in terms of communication to get somebody there, utilizing what you talked about earlier on in terms of, let's say, Doug and Daniel are doing a retreat together in a five-star hotel over in XYZ. What do you think really would be the catch that would get people there?
So I always start with a few frameworks. So there are certain frameworks about hooks, authority, benefits, call to action. So there's certain frameworks that work. And so you want to pick a good framework and you say, okay, in this format, this framework works. ChatGPT is pretty good for this. So you can sort of say, hey, look, I'm doing a 60-second ad on Instagram. Give me a framework that is a good marketing framework. And then you might put in some of the raw material and say, help me script the 60 seconds. I always like starting with a framework and then playing around with how we might execute. But look, the bigger picture for something like a retreat is that we need to do a build-up campaign where we get signaled interest but no sales, and we invite people to just signal interest. And what we're trying to do is we basically say, I'm Daniel Priestley. Um, I'm Daniel Priestley. You're probably, as a company, you're probably really concerned about the impact of AI on your current business. In fact, many smart businesses are considering that if they don't respond now, like in the next 3 to 6 months tops, then they're going to be left behind by this incredible technology. The AI technology poses a existential threat to every business on the planet, and great leaders want to get ahead of that. So I'm running a retreat, and the retreat is about how do we reinvent our business from the ground up as an AI first business. And it's going to be a time to get away and think about this huge challenge with other business leaders. I personally have done that with my business, and I've done it with many other businesses, and I'm bringing together 3 or 4 of my top contacts who are specialists in solving this problem. In order to have an invitation to the retreat, you need to fill in an application. And what we'll be doing is reviewing the applications at the end of the month and letting you know whether you've been selected to come on the retreat. The retreat is not for everyone. We're not looking for startups. We're not looking for businesses that are there to critique the idea of whether AI is a real thing. We're looking for businesses of a certain type and caliber who add value to the network that we're building. If you'd like to be part of that, fill in the application.
I love that. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to this now, that was a question that I certainly did not tell him beforehand. So that was brilliant. I absolutely love it. That's absolutely amazing. And I think that could obviously be applied to whether it's a retreat, an event, online or in person or whatever, which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
So the hook was the existential threat of AI, right? Because we need a problem to solve. Everything that people buy to solve problems. So if you can't name the problem, you've got, the bigger the problem, the bigger the purchase, the faster the purchase as well. The more urgent the problem, the more quickly the buy, the sale. So the hook was that, and then I did credibility. I've done this before, and I'm bringing together a team. And then I did call to action, which was basically I want you to fill in an application. Now the reason I did application is because if someone is going to buy something, they have to be about 95% ready to buy. A lot has to line up. What are the dates? How much is it? Who are the experts? Blah, blah, blah. In order to fill in an application, might only need to be 15% interested. So I can really lower the bar of just getting the applications. Now, my goal is to, if I'm going to have a retreat of 60, I probably want something like 250, 300, 400. I want to be like at least 5 to 1. 300 people would be great. So I get 300 applications, and I then go back to everyone and I say, look, it's going to be an amazing retreat, but I got some bad news. There are 300 people applied, and there's only 60 people who are coming with us. So I'm going to give you the dates and the prices, and then I'm going to let you know that the tickets will go on sale on Friday. You've got 2 or 3 days to be able to check the dates, check the budget, get approval, and on Friday the tickets go live. But there will be 300 people, and there's only 60 spots.
Love it. Absolutely love that. That is brilliant. And I linked into that. I know you do a massive amount, and I heard you say in one of your speeches that it's so important to keep the marketing going over and over and over and never turn it off. And I can see you don't. In terms of all the different types of mediums to market in, I see you on Instagram all the time. Is it Instagram for you, or is it Facebook, or is it, Google search? What's your favorite?
Um, so I really like things like Google are very good for high intent, solution aware purchases. So I want to buy this particular thing, and I know what I want, and I'm looking for the thing. So I might say I'm looking for vitamin D supplements, you know, so I'm going to search vitamin D supplements. So this is called being solution aware, and it's called high intent. And Google's really good for that. But those are the worst customers you can possibly get. People who are solution aware are terrible to deal with. So, like, for example, if I know that I want a leadership coach, I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to say, oh, I want a leadership coach, but I only want someone who can meet me face to face at my local coffee shop, because I like to do that. And I've already agreed my budget with my board. So I only want someone who can fit within my price point. And I want you to have an MBA from Harvard. And I want you to be an expert in this particular model and method, because I did my research and I found that that's the thing. And you're sitting there going, what? Like, oh, like you've cooked up this criteria, and now I'm arguing you that those things don't matter, and you're fighting with me. So solution aware people are horrible. The perfect person to buy something is someone who's problem aware but not solution aware. So they know that they're frustrated that they've got a leadership challenge. They know that their business isn't performing. They really feel nervous about a particular upcoming thing. They're worried about AI and they haven't done anything about it, but they know it exists and all of that. They know that their team is going to face some challenges in the year ahead, because they've got two of their senior team members are due to retire, let's say. Right? How are we going to replace them? They've got some sort of problem in mind, but they haven't yet figured out how to solve it. Those are the people where you come in and say, hey, look, let me talk you through our leadership methodology. So this is where you're dealing with a problem-aware person rather than a solution-aware person. Those people, they discover things on YouTube, they discover things on X, they discover things on... So this is about discovery, and it's about connecting with people. So believe it or not, Instagram is a great place. YouTube is a really great place. Even Facebook, to a degree, is still a good place. So I'm looking for anywhere where I can connect with someone who isn't looking for the solution. They're problem aware, right?
Yeah, no, I literally, as I was saying earlier on, I see, obviously, because we're connected on Instagram, I see your actual organic posts, but I see your sponsored ones literally every second minute. So they're working. They're working for me anyway, which is
and hopefully they stir something up in you. Hopefully you go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like
100%. They
the
do.
goal
Yeah.
is the goal is to get you thinking about something that you may not have been thinking about, because I just know that it's far better to be the one who stirred up the beehive.
No, no, they do. I love them. I love the difference as well. If you have the ones when you're sitting there in the chair, you're in your car, or wherever, it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. As I mentioned earlier on, your books as well, and I've read two of them, and I have to say they're absolutely fantastic in terms of Key Person of Influence and 24 Assets, and I will be reading the others as well. I think you've got the Entrepreneur Revolution as well.
Entrepreneur Revolution, probably you're too far beyond that, but you might like oversubscribed.
Hmm.
And you may like the new book that comes out next year called The Lifestyle Business Playbook.
Ooh, yeah, no, I would like that one very much so. No, that's definitely up my street. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it now. Get ready, and is there a waiting list for that one?
There will be, yeah. There's a psychological waiting list before the real waiting list goes live.
which you've just implemented already for me anyway. Look, and I know you're very well read, and I know that you have a world of knowledge. But I'd love to know, other than your own, what book would you suggest to every entrepreneur they should read in 2025?
Oh, okay, my favorite book, and you're gonna find this a strange recommendation. There's a kid's book that I read to my kids, and everyone should read this damn book. It's called Stone Soup,
Wow,
and
never
it's
heard of that.
you've never heard of Stone Soup. So it's these traveling vagabonds who arrive into a village, and the villagers, it's winter, and the villagers say, look, we have no food for you, we have no way of helping you, please move on to the next village, get out of here. And they say, we're not here to ask you for food, we're here to make food for you. And they go, really? I say, yeah, have you ever heard of stone soup? And they go, no, I've never heard of stone soup. And they basically say, look, what we're going to do is put these stones in this big pot of water, and we're going to start making delicious stone soup for you. And the water bubbles and the stones get placed into the pot. And he tastes it and he says, oh, it's so good. He goes, but it would be amazing if we just had a little bit of salt. And he says, okay, I've got some salt. He goes, do you know, we can have it as it is, but the best stone soup has vegetables. Does anyone have any vegetables? Oh, yeah, we've got some vegetables. They run off and get vegetables. He goes, do you want a vegetarian version, or we can do a meat version if anyone's got some offcuts of chicken, any leftover meat? Oh, well, we've got some offcuts, right? Great, throw that in. And as soon as obviously you see how this unfolds, that it's the best soup they've ever had. And they go, wow, this stone soup's incredible, right? And what I'm teaching I love to teach my kids this idea that you can stone soup things into existence. That if
Mm,
you create the intention, if you create the space, if you pitch to people, if you create the vision and everyone is aligned to the vision, you can start with seemingly nothing and you can pitch it into existence. So in our family, we call this stone souping it into existence, or stone souping it. And look, I've only got little kids, but I'm planting that seed, that it's that ability to, you know, get people engaged in a project that actually makes the thing work.
I love that. And linked into that, you obviously have a love for books because you've written five. And if you could do, if let's say I gave you, I don't know, 100 million, but you had to do something still, so you didn't need to work for money. What do you love doing the most? What would you do for free that you just absolutely, you spring out of bed every day and you still do it?
Well, I really enjoy going on podcasts because I love these conversations,
Yeah,
right?
me
So
too.
the most indulgent thing that I cannot believe that I get to do is go on podcasts. And I can't believe that's part of what people call work. Because I just love big conversations with big thinkers with a tight time frame. I love the fact that we're trying to cram as many ideas as possible into a quick episode. So going on podcasts would definitely be it. Speaking at conferences, I love speaking at conferences. I love being able to travel tax deductively, where we get to go to fun cities all over the world and speak and get paid to speak and all of that. Um, I I adore the early stages of launching a business. I just love going from 0 to 5 million of revenue, where you basically magic something into existence, and you come up with an idea, and the next thing you know, it's a waiting list, and the next thing you know, it's a launch campaign and a beta version. Um, funny thing is, I kind of don't need any money at the moment. Like, if you gave me 100 million, I would live in the same house that I live in now, drive the same car I drive right now, and pretty much live the way that I live right now. And what do I do? Podcasts, startups, speaking.
I love that. Well, just the final question then. And I know Lewis Howes asked you this in a different way. So I always say to people, if I was to put you on a stage in front of 10,000 people and beam it out on my podcast to the 8.3 billion people or whatever there is on in the planet, and you were 90 years of age, it was like your leg. I know you're only 44 now, so it's a long way off, but just based on where you are now. But if you were 90 and it was like your legacy speech, what would you talk about, and what message or legacy would you like to leave?
It's a great question, and it's I thought a lot about this when we created the values for Dent Business Accelerators. So literally, the activity that we went through was the activity of your at the very end of life, and a young person comes up and says, "What's your advice for having a life as good as yours? Because you've done it really well. What's the three things that you would pass on as advice?" And I said, "Be brave, have fun, make a big dent in the universe." So the three things that I love sharing in that context is that success requires bravery. If you're not doing something that requires being brave, then you're not doing something big enough. You've got to step out of your comfort zone at some point. You've got to do something that makes the hairs stand up on your arms. Have fun. I think there's a great biological signal around fun that is about doing something with the right people, that's challenging, that's got a great game, it's great payoff, it's got a great mix of discipline, but also variety. You get good at it, right? All of that is like ingredients for fun. And then make a dent, which is solve meaningful problems, do meaningful stuff, have a meaningful impact with life. If you think about making a dent in the universe, if you make a dent in a car, it's because you had a meaningful impact with something. If you make a dent in the universe, it's because you have a meaningful impact with life. So it's like, well, what would be the most meaningful work you could do? What would be the biggest, most meaningful problem that you could solve at the biggest scale you could solve it? Solve big, meaningful problems at big, meaningful scales. So be brave, have fun, make a dent.
I love that. And I know you are living your dream, living your purpose, leaving your legacy with so many different people out there. Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I thank you so much, and I wish you every success going forward.
Amazing. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for having me on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Daniel Priestley on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'll be back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me at doug@dougdgordon.com. From all of us here on the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational week and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.